Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hong. And of course, I got my co-host, Dr. Emmett Bean, here with me, and my super producer extraordinaire, Jamie. And we're here at the Pop Creative Media Studios in Honolulu, Hawaii. And this is our first return guest that we're having today. We got Lopaka, the ghost storytelling extraordinaire. He was one of our earlier guests, and it was one of our more popular episodes because everybody, of course, was so interested in all of his ghost stories that he told us. And it was by far the most scared Jamie's ever been. She tried so hard to leave the room when he was here, especially after that crazy story that he told about the girl being possessed on the second floor. Woo, I still get chicken skin thinking about that. But if you haven't heard that episode yet, go back in our archives and you can listen to it anytime. But we wanted to have Lopaka back on again because it's almost, it's October, which is, of course, synonymous with Halloween. And so we assumed, oh, man, what an appropriate guest to have during the Halloween season than Lopaka. And we thought it'd be cool to just hear some cool stories. But what we didn't realize is that he's got all kinds of great tours going on as well. So as he was explaining to us the different types of tours that he has going on throughout the month, like he started telling us some more great, crazy stories. And in fact, one of the tours, I think Jamie is very close to deciding that she wants to go on it, which is huge because she is the biggest scaredy cat and has no desire to be scared at all. But it deals with legal stuff and court cases, which is like her love next to Game of Thrones. That's like her second biggest passion. So she's still on the fence, but she said that she thinks she might be willing to do this tour. So that says a lot about what we talk about. So I can't wait for you to hear this episode. It's a really fun one. Here it is for the second time, Lopaka. Well, he's back. Thanks, Lopaka, for coming.
No problem.
Hanging out with us again. And
I bought you some pictures.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We can.
What is it of?
Oh, stuff that people have sent me. Stuff.
Oh, man. Okay, before we get into that.
We can do it later.
Yeah. So Jamie was really excited to have you and also terrified. And she was like debating whether she could stay in the room or not.
Oh, yeah, you can stay.
Because, she thoroughly enjoyed the first time he came through, but she was like so scared.
Right.
And then I said, well, Halloween's coming up. We have to have Lopaka back on. And she's like, yes, we do.
Right.
I don't want to be there. But yeah, we thought it'd be so appropriate with the Halloween season coming up, you know, and everybody loved your first episode. In fact, several of our listeners went and took the tour with you, right?
Right.
Yeah. So then a lot of people said like, oh, have him back on. We didn't feel like we got enough. So I was like, okay, this is the perfect time to call you back. And so thanks for coming by. I know it's a busy time for you, so it's cool that you made it. I wanted to get into, we actually had some of our fans on Facebook ask some questions and stuff that they wanted to share with you. We'll get into that as well, but I wanted to just start off with, I was talking to you earlier about how I assume that, you know, the Halloween season is probably like the peak time for you, but you're saying that it's actually been peak since April, huh?
Since April. It gets to be January and everybody's recovering from the holidays, and then things start to slowly pick up around the end of February, and it's around spring break time. So there's a lot of local people from, who are living on the continent coming home spring break or whatever, and, some haven't been home for a while and they want to do a ghost tour.
Yeah, that's the first thing I think of when I come back from school. I was spooked by my grades, and I was like, spooked again with some extra paranormal activity, right?
Well, the good thing is the tourists we get are also interested in, something more than just Waikiki and the luau shows.
That's true, right? Yeah. And when you think Hawaii, like, you think the typical normal stuff, but we also know that Hawaii is very spiritual as well, too. So, and that's actually kind of related to one of the questions that we had. But are certain parts of the world or country like there's more paranormal activity or more spirits are like is Hawaii kind of like a hotbed for?
No, if you want to be more specific, the island of Kauai is actually the focus of all the psychic energy.
Why is that?
I think it's a combination of it having to be the oldest island and having the most powerful kahuna and prophets. They all came from Kauai. So it was none of this, I think I sense your father. It's like, your father's right there. He's upset, because you're not investing.
You know, the weird thing is, as you're talking about this, like, I feel like I'm hearing some eerie music, and it literally is eerie music coming from your phone.
Oh my God.
It's my ringtone.
I was like,
my God.
I feel like as if I'm
Is that in my head?
Let me turn my phone off. I'm sorry.
I was like, this is so eerie.
I was in the middle
I hear
of
music playing, like scary ghost music.
I was in the middle of telling ghost stories to a bunch of teachers at Lunalilo Elementary and getting to the most scariest part, and the ringtone goes on. Woo! Everybody's like,
do you like cue your wife or somebody to call you at a certain time? Like, okay, at 9:45, call me, because that's when I'll be at this point of the story.
No comment. I can't give away the secrets. But that was purely accidental. So getting back to your question, Kauai would probably be the most powerful place as far as psychic energy and spiritual energy. But if you're talking about constant happenings, that would have to be Hawaii Island, the Big Island, because there's literally creative energy going on all the time. And the people who are sensitive, like myself, open, that place, the Big Island, either serves your creative energy or messes you up completely.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we've my niece, who's a kumu of her own, Lomi Halau, has told me that when she was on Hawaii Island, she met a woman who was not from Hawaii, and said that she was the reincarnation of Pele. Mm-hmm. And, proceeded to walk off a cliff to prove her point, and fell, 50 feet and broke both of her ankles.
Oh.
What?
Yeah. So there's something about...
She literally walked off a 50-foot ledge.
Yeah, to prove that she was Pele, because, she thought she was going to float, but...
What?
Yeah.
Well, could she still be Pele? And can Pele just have very sensitive ankles or something?
Oh my God.
Well, we're heading to the Big Island a day early before our Chicken Skin concert on the weekend of October 14th. And the reason we're going there early is because a friend of mine said that a friend of his just recently, within the past few months, had a one-on-one encounter with Pele at a restaurant or an eatery out in Kalapana.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so going to go head out there and talk to the guy and, find out what's what.
Do you know any more details of the story?
If I remember correctly, it was a place where tourists stopped to eat local food.
Yeah.
And everybody had gone, and the guy noticed that his auntie always made a plate of food for this one Hawaiian woman who just came to get the food, gave it to her, she'd sit down and wouldn't charge her. And so after a while, he's like, Auntie, how come that lady comes and you don't charge her nothing? And she says, well, that's Pele. I don't charge her. He's like, what? That's not Pele. Yeah. And the woman just walked by him and went to sit down, and he turned around and the woman was gone.
And there's no other...
Parking lot is empty. It's such a big, expansive place that there's nowhere she could have gone without him seeing her go anywhere. And he said a while after that, there's that volcano flow that was just coming recently, and all the tour companies would take their people to see the volcano. He got into trouble. So, and they're going to show me this too. There's actually a dried lava flow. When you look at it, it went around this house, but it actually went uphill. The lava flow is going uphill, comes around the house, and comes back down.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And do you know the people who lived in or own that house?
Those are the people I'm going to meet and talk to.
Wow.
Yeah. So, for right now, active energy, probably the Big Island. But for the more deep stuff, I would probably say it's Kauai.
What does that mean when you said if you're open, it can mess you up?
Well, it depends upon where you are in your life. So, if you're a person who's open to receiving certain types of energies, you know how to channel it and use it in a positive way. Or you don't get affected by the negative stuff. But there's other people who are open that, they don't know what's going on. And they haven't learned to channel it in a certain way. So that those creative types of energy kind of messes people up. Especially if they're, substance abusers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you walk off.
Yeah.
And then you walk off a cliff, thinking you're Pele and you're gonna float in the air.
Here may be a naive question, but like, so when there's cases like, or stories like where this lady's feeding Pele, like, from Pele's point of view, like, is it that she's a spirit that just needs to know that people are going to be kind to her? Like, because she can't actually eat the food, right? Or, I mean, I guess she can. How does this work?
Historically. But according to most Pele legends, herself, she would not take any food. But her sister Hiyaka would only eat broiled luau leaves or taro leaves. But you just hit it on the head. The whole purpose of the feeding and the offering of a ride and, the giving of something to drink is her seeing if you still have some ounce of humanity, some kind of respect. And I remember growing up where our house was always open to passersby, and we used to take in this guy who was they called him a wino back then. Today it's like an alcoholic. But I remember my parents taking him in, giving him my dad's old clothes, and feeding him, cleaning him up, and sending him on his way. And I remember I used to ask, why do we take that guy and he's so stinky, he doesn't bathe? And she says, because that's what Hawaiian people do. That's our custom. Mm-hmm. But you don't have that anymore. But the other thing she said growing up in Hilo is, you never know who it is. It might be Pele.
And I guess the question that I would have too is, so does she know, like, does she specifically pick out people to test out, or is this just random? Like, for instance, this person who's serving the food, like, did she seek out that person specifically, or is it just that she just randomly selects who she wants to kind of check and test?
No, I think it's specific.
Oh, I see.
After years of doing this, it's never anything random.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it actually gives person, the 2 minutes that if they had taken those 2 minutes without meeting Pele, they probably would have died.
Whoa.
Got into a car accident, something fall on them.
Yeah.
So these 2 minutes of meeting this old Hawaiian woman and having this interaction is actually taking you away from that spot where you're supposed to be, where something could have happened. And that's a classic case. That happens a lot. So who knows, the purpose of this woman, feeding Pele other than respect.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows, that lava flow recently could have come right through that place.
That's trippy.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to have you back on after this trip, since I want to find out what happened on this trip.
Okay.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah.
'Cause, I've heard of cases where the lava avoids houses, but I've never heard of where it went uphill to avoid the house.
So I'm interested to see that. We're going to, take a lot of documentation and talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's incidents like that actually end up becoming, stories.
You're right.
And a lot of these stories are first-hand accounts. They're from people who've had experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the weekend of October 14th. And it's a 2-night concert at the Kilauea military camp, the theater.
And when you say it's a concert, so is it a mixture of storytelling and music, or is it just like a storytelling concert?
Storytelling concert.
Gotcha.
And this is going to be our 3rd year. And it's, past 2 years it's sold out both nights, so we're hoping for a good turnout this time.
So are there going to be multiple storytellers, or is it just...
Just myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're the headliner.
I know. No pressure.
So is it easy? How it's obviously a different type of venue, because like with your tours, you got a small group of maybe 20, 30 people, and they can interact with you and such. But at this concert, like you're talking to a mass of people.
Right.
Is there, I guess, more difficulty in connecting? Because I would assume storytelling a lot has to do with what you receive back as far as the reactions and the energies that people give you.
Right.
Is the concert feel more difficult for you, or just different?
Oh, not at all. In fact, and this comes from being a wrestler for many years, but, you get to know how to gauge your audience, and what is getting them excited and what's not. But mainly it's almost like a one-man show where, I have to, become some of the characters in the story, just to get the story across. And it gets really intense, because I get in there. And a couple of times my wife has said, she's like, that's the best I've ever seen you do that. It's like, that wasn't even you on the stage.
Wait, so she's saying the best you is not you.
Yeah. Yeah. What's up with that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's my rock. Without her, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But I'm thankful that she's brutally honest. Sometimes I don't like it and have to sit with it for a couple of days. I'm like, okay, you're right.
We live very similar lives because Jenny's kind of the same with me. Many times where I'd look at her, I'm like, oh, she's not a big fan of that. But for these concerts, like, have you ever noticed, like, have there ever been like any kind of memorable things that happened, like maybe an audience member flipped out or?
Yeah, that's happened. The first time I went up there to Hilo right after the concert, like right after it was over, park ranger and his girlfriend came up to me and he's like, bro, you like to see your night marchers? You like to see night marchers? I was like, no. He's like, you know, like, see, bro, I take you right now. I was like, no. And he's like, why? I said, because tonight is not the night of the night marchers. He goes, no, we go straight out to the pit. I was like, yeah, right.
So did you not want to go just because you knew it was fake, or like you genuinely didn't want to go see night marchers?
Well, it wasn't a night marchers night.
If it was, though, would you be like, yeah, let's go?
No, like, if it was, I would have taken them.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a procession that comes right through the back of that theater at the Volcanoes National Park. But, I think this guy was just trying to show off for his girlfriend.
Oh, I see. Well, speaking of night marchers, so our friend Kyle wrote to us on our Facebook because we'd ask people to share any questions.
Right. Kyle, what's his name and address? Where does he live?
He's in Aries, and but he was asking. He said that there's been stories that there's been menehune sightings in Waikiki, and he wanted to know if you'd heard that or how valid those kind of claims could be, or are there any menehunes on Oahu?
There are menehune on Oahu, but as far as my research goes, and if anybody else knows, please speak up, but there has not been, as far as I know, any menehune sightings in Waikiki. And there has been, historically, no accounts of menehune building anything within the Waikiki Ahupua'a overnight and disappearing. But if there's somebody out there who knows otherwise, please submit your testimony.
How often do you get like people coming to you with these stories where oh, I saw this or did this, and you have to go and do like, I guess, your own research to validate?
A lot of times it doesn't take research. If they tell me that they live in Ocean Point and they saw a menehune, then that makes sense, because there used to be a fishing village there where the people who lived in that fishing village fed the menehune. So that would make sense. Yeah. And if people in Manoa tell me that, they have menehune footprints on their ceilings, that makes sense too, because there's the remnants of an old menehune fort in Manoa. A heiau.
What?
Yeah.
So wait, well, why would they be on the ceiling though?
Well, because, menehune are troublemakers. And so sometimes they get a joy out of doing things. And if you don't react, then they'll stop doing it. But the second you react, they'll keep doing it.
Oh, like a kid.
Yeah. Except they're not kids. They're just, adults about this size, fully formed, but just, troublemakers. And so I think during the time of Kaumuali'i, the Ali'i of Kauai, there was a census that was taken. And in Waimea, they had taken a census of a menehune family. I think there's about 76 of them.
Oh my God!
And so there's people today who are from Kauai who claim to be descendants of menehune.
Ah.
And I know a couple of them personally. So they're not fables, they're not legends, and they're certainly not mini Bigfoots like that stupid reality show said. Yeah.
That one that you're talking about is like there's a reality show where they go looking for Bigfoot, and they, I guess, went to Kauai?
Kauai,
to go look for Bigfoot?
Right, and they said the menehune have a little big foot or feet. Yeah. Yeah. But there was a friend of mine years ago. We were working together at an old video store, and he was sharing a house in Manoa, and he said one night he came back from class, laid on a couch much like this one, is just cruising, and closed his eyes for a second, and he heard, and he looked up, and he said there's little footprints going up the wall, the ceiling, like right above him.
Yeah.
And he said the footprints stop, and there's these dots. And he kind of realized, he goes, those are not dots, those are like toe prints. So he says, I think whatever that was standing on its tippy toes, trying to play with me.
Reach him. Oh,
Reach
wow.
it. Yeah, and then it went down the other side of the wall, sealing down the wall. But the house he used to live in was right below the place where the Menehune heiau is today. I think it's on the grounds of the cookhouse in Manoa.
Oh, I'm not familiar with what that is. Is that kind of near where the Paradise Park or whatever is?
No. I think it's along East Manoa Road. It's the old cookhouse. It's a historical house.
Oh.
But on the property is the old Menehune heiau.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
For the people who live in that house or on that property, I mean...
Oh, they love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, they love it.
Because I would assume there's a lot of activity there, if that's where the...
Yeah, there probably has to be. I haven't heard anything from them personally, but I'm not sure as to what the hours are when you can go and visit, but you can.
Now all of our friends and listeners who live in Manoa are probably freaking out. Yeah, all that time they thought it was just geckos running across the ceiling. It's like, no.
It's the Menehune.
Wow. Well, Kyle will be stoked to know that. I'm sure he would love those stories.
Right.
So for going back to what you got planned for, I guess, the month of October, are there any special tours that...
We are busy every single night in October. We've got a Groupon deals. You can check that on our website, mysteries-of-hawaii.com, our fan page, Mysteries of Honolulu. And we have the entire month of October, every Friday and Saturday, the... what do I want to call it? The Crazy Haunted Zombie Trolley Tour.
What?
Yeah, that we're collaborating with Inua Tours.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so, and it's... All I'm going to say is that it's going to be a very interactive tour. And people have thought for so long, because, I guess I look like I'm so serious, that I would never lower myself to do an interactive tour, but I've been wanting to do it for years. I just can't find anybody to commit to wear the white wedding dress in the middle of, the Pali, Old Pali Road in the pitch black.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Fun stuff like that.
You have a lot of actor friends, I'm sure.
Yeah, but the second I say it's, oh yeah, I'll do it. Well, what's it for? I'm like, it's on my ghost tour. Well, I can't do that, bro.
Yeah. I'd also be worried that what kind of karma will be brought upon me.
Yeah. Or even, being at a dark place like Kanea Kapupu and, just hire this little 8-year-old boy to dress like the kid from The Grudge.
Oh, my God. Wow. So this particular trolley tour is for people who get a kick out of really being scared.
Yeah.
They never want to sleep again.
Yeah. And it will not end. It'll be high octane from beginning to end. It will not stop.
Oh
But it's still gonna. So it's basically incorporating the stories, but with some
stuff,
interactive elements to it.
Yeah.
How long is a tour like this usually go?
There's going to be 2 in one night, every Friday and Saturday. So I think both are about an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Starts in Waikiki, heads out somewhere that way, and ends back in Waikiki. I think we're going to pick up at the Kapi'olani Park Bandstand.
Ooh. Yeah. Now, is there a lot of stuff over there, too? I got to imagine that there is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Do you want to hear one?
Yes! Jay's hands are dripping with sweat right now.
So, we just I just did the haunted tour of the Battle of Nu'uanu, last week, Saturday. And one of the things we talked about was how the battle actually started from, when the fleet landed at Sandy Beach in Waikiki. There was little skirmishes going on along the way. And at the end of the battle, Kamehameha actually took prisoners of war and took them to a compound where the old Cannon Club used to be on the slopes of Diamond Head. Now I think it's going to be a culinary arts school.
Yeah, they just opened it, I think, the first phase.
Yeah. So his prisoners of war were stationed there, and when he put them in this compound, the first thing he did was break all their bones. And let them suffer for a couple of weeks, and then came back and scooped out all their eyes. What? And let them suffer.
This isn't scary. This is gross.
Oh no, it's getting scary. And then he comes back and he cuts all their heads off.
Oh my gosh.
And so that old sacrificial temple on the slopes of Diamond Head called Papa'ena'ena, he put their heads on stakes along the walls, just as a sign to everybody else, this is what happens when you mess with the king.
Don't mess with the king.
So, can you guess what's sitting on a portion of that heiau today?
The Kapiolani bandstand?
No. The La Pietra School for Girls.
No!
Yeah.
We have a few friends who've graduated or taught there, and I want to know if they...
Well, I did some ghost stories there, but I remember the principal told me as long as you don't say anything about the school, you can tell any ghost story.
Yeah.
So,
well, but on that property is so La Pietra used to be like this big mansion, right?
Yeah.
So I guess a very, very rich, powerful family.
That's why they don't live there anymore.
Yeah, probably.
Wow.
Yeah. Back then it was all about development. Nobody cared about any ancient culture that was there before. But about 1860, Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, writes in his journal that, we are taking a short jaunt through the park named after the Queen, Kapiolani. And I've noticed a strange bumping and thumping and a sound of crunching. And so the horse-drawn carriage, the wheels were running over skulls. Skeletons, he said, from the old battle of the great king Kamehameha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Through Kapiolani Park.
Jamie's kids have soccer practice at Kapiolani Park, and I always complain
all the time.
how terrible it is. Like the field is lumpy, and I always get bit by these ants that I get allergic reactions to. And now I think it's true because it's all of that. It's bumpy because of all of the skulls in the ground.
Well, no, it's not over. There's a night marcher trail that comes from Aihualama through Manoa. The Chinese Cemetery, Wa'ahila Ridge, and somewhere it stops at St. Louis Heights, but it comes down through a portion of Mo'iliili. And there's two processions that actually end up at, one ends up going through the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. This other one takes a left turn through Kapiolani Park, through the bandstand, and actually ends up at La Pietra. So that night marcher procession, police officers have told me that, 10 o'clock they got to go on the quads and roust out all the homeless and, the whoever. And a couple of officers have told me, the newer ones now and officers from 15 years ago have told me when they've gone through the park chasing all these people out, something they couldn't see would grab the Cushman or the quad and just turn it upside down with them in it and shake them out of it. And one officer said he hit the ground and he looked up. He said there was a procession of warriors coming through the park, and they had no heads.
Whoa!
Yeah, so I think it was probably those same warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Dang.
Yeah.
When does this happen? At nighttime.
The last four moon phases of the Hawaiian lunar calendar, when the moon is going dark.
So not during soccer time.
I shrug my shoulders. You can't see it, listeners.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing about the night marcher moon phase is as long as it's the moon phase, doesn't matter if the sun's up or down, it's still their time.
I was just about to ask that.
What?
So I thought, every time we think about, activities, or spiritual activities, it's always it's at night.
Mm. Well, that's what Hollywood has conditioned us to believe.
Yeah. But you're saying that, it can happen in the daytime.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I just got a call from a guy who told me, you know how you have your camera in your house and you can see it from your phone?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like security cameras.
Yeah. So his daughter was physically assaulted in the house by something that wasn't there.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so that's in broad daylight.
Did he show you the footage or?
No, he said it ran out of batteries right at that point, but he said, but it was there. I believe you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you do have to worry about his soccer practice.
Soccer.
Yeah. Oh no,
I've been asking forever. It's this sport is terrible. Let's play something like basketball
or rugby
in a gym where it's covered and there's.
Yeah, they have soccer games in gyms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all the way in Kapolei.
Kapolei, oh yeah, that's the drive. That's another haunted place.
Speaking of Kapolei, our friend Kyle, who went on your tour, said that you had talked about possibly doing a tour out in Kapolei.
Yes, we're doing one October 8th.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's for the Uluwa'e program. And they've been asking me if I would develop something for the other planes on a regular basis. I don't know if I want to do that. It's kind of active out there.
That's what you're saying, because Waianae is like super active, right? But you've kind of tapped it out a little and want to give it a rest. I think that's what you're saying the last time.
Yeah, just give it a break. But, with all the building and development going up in Kapolei, because of that, it's also making that place very active. So, there's a particular shopping mall in Kapolei that you might want to avoid because it's been having a lot of activity.
So is it because it was built on a kind of hot property that...
Well, the entire Ewa Plains, like from Ewa all the way out to Barbers Point. It's the famous plains of Kaupe'a. It's, a realm of restless spirits.
Why is that?
There's always a place where, in our culture, it's called Ao Milu. Milu is the underworld where, spirits would be able to pass or be sort of judged before they pass. And there was always a huge ulu or breadfruit tree that was like black and rotted on one side because that's where the ancestors fell into the underworld. That was not the good place. And the side of the tree that was whole and green and flourishing was where your ancestors would take you to the good place. If you had Oma Kua, family who cared for you. And so there are numerous places like that in and around the Ewa Plains. And of course, the Night Marcher Trail that comes through Barbers Point and Habush and through most of Ocean Point. So it's been crazy active, like since forever. The unfortunate thing is in the development of that, because development is so important, they've destroyed rare medicinal plants, that are hard to find and probably can't find them anymore because of, this new development that's going on.
Are you serious? No, and nobody thought to, at least try to, uproot them and try to regrow them somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm sure some people did, but, when they have those community meetings and, people come and speak, those community meetings are actually pointless because money's already been exchanged. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Right. It's more to try to convince them that it's okay rather than hear what they feel. You
need the development. Yeah. But I know at one community meeting I was unfavorably looked upon in the beginning by all the local people because I kept telling the developers, thank you very much for what you're doing. I so appreciate all these things that you're building because there's so many sacred places in this area that as long as you build on top of them, you will keep me in business. And I will continue to tell these stories about these places where you build.
If they had any sense in them, they would actually take that and build an actual location for you and make money off of that. Come to Lopaka's extra tours of the spirits,
the haunted mall.
Yeah.
Yeah, the haunted UH College out west. Yeah. Oh, I've given it away.
Do we need to bleep these?
Yes, you probably do.
We should do that. Yeah. Let's not get Lopaka in any more trouble than he already is.
Yeah, I don't care. I've been banned from shopping malls and hotels.
Wow, so you got several different tours throughout October planned then, huh? The one that you mentioned, can you share about that on here? The one about, what was it that you're just saying? The courthouse?
Oh, October 7th.
Yeah, that sounds so interesting. What is that?
I'm working on it right now. So what's going on is on October 7th at 7 o'clock, we're meeting at the Ali'ulanihale, the famous place where the Kamehameha statue is. And we're going to go into the courtroom museum and talk about a few of the most infamous cases that happened in Hawaii, the Massey trial, the murder of Gil Jameson by Miles Fukunaga back in 1928, I believe.
I was just going to say, how do you remember all of these stories? This is I can barely remember my 2 lines for Inhumans. You got this Britannica of all these stories and details. It's amazing.
No, talk to my wife because she's like, I just told you that a minute ago.
Now your brain is full of all
how could
stuff.
You forget? Well, like I said, without her, I probably wouldn't remember where my head is. Here it is, because I want to make sure that I get across the proper name. So it's called, the name of this tour is called Stay of Execution.
That's trippy.
And so the heading says...
Just talking about beheadings and all.
Yeah.
Execution now.
So it says, perhaps the ghosts of murderers and the murdered return to tell their side of the story.
I want to go to that one.
Wow, that says a lot, because Jamie does not want to do anything
right
with
But the Massey case.
Massey trial. Trial's been over for decades, but what's the word we're looking for? The leftover stuff, the remnants of that case is still embedded within the framework, the woodwork of that courtroom.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And so, all I'll say is in a particular kind of way, these ghosts from the past will come forth and,
share their story, I guess.
Their side of the story.
Yeah.
So to say. And then I think afterwards we'll let people walk around, take some pictures and audio recordings.
And a lot of the times from that, you'll kind of capture some stuff, right? Because through that, you'll tend to find, there's something you mentioned about how, electronics can, some of the wavelengths you can capture that, right?
What did I say? But it's basically this other frequency that's going on.
That's it, frequency. Oh, and of course... That's what we hear as soon as you start talking about it. Speaking of frequencies.
Yeah. I mean, there's been so many times where I've been recorded telling a story or something, and we play it back, and under my voice you can hear another voice.
Yeah.
Almost replying to what I'm saying in the story.
And can you hear it, on the spiritual level? I guess, somebody's saying something, but you just know that we can't hear.
I've heard it numerous times.
Wow.
The most infamous one that was caught on a recording, and they actually gave me the digital record. I should have brought it. I'll bring it next time. Was Channel 2 News with Marissa Yamane. We were filming out at the Pupukea Heiau.
Uh-huh.
And I forgot what she said, and it was something in reference to the stars. And she was saying something, the stars are so bright, they're like clusters because there's no lights out there.
Yeah.
And I hear this guy's voice say, right here, you can see the stars. And I turned around because I thought it was a cameraman, but he's still in the parking lot getting the tripod. That was Justin Cano. I was like, well, I just heard this. And so on the way back, they're playing it, and they keyed it up to that point, and you can hear it plain as day.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's other voices we recorded, in my Masonic Lodge. Yeah. So when I come back, I'll bring that.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, depending on...
Did she hear it?
She didn't hear it, but I heard it. And the fact that I told her what I heard word for word, and it was caught,
Yeah.
Oh, that's nuts.
Really said something.
Wow.
Yeah, and she hasn't spoken to me since then.
I can see why.
Yeah. Well, no, when you get to the news anchor position, you don't worry about, stuff like that. It's not news.
Wow. So then this tour is going to allow people to kind of get access to these places. Is it at night?
It's at night, yeah.
Ooh, scary.
Yeah, and I've been told by people who work there that there's, ghosts of old judges that still haunt the place, people who've been wrongly prosecuted.
So is that because, I assume when they get prosecuted and such, they don't necessarily stay there. They, go to jail somewhere else and when they pass away. So why do they go back as spirits to the courthouse rather than home or something?
Have you ever sat through a court case?
Yes.
So you know how tense and emotional that can get.
Yeah.
A lot of times those emotions peak at a certain point, especially when a decision about the rest of your life is made.
Right.
So sometimes those emotions are so intense they leave a psychic thumbprint on the place.
Oh.
So a lot of times, people see it as, the convicted person being coming back, but it's actually sort of like a residual recording, of that moment that was left in that room because of all this intense emotion going on.
That's interesting because, we just assume, because we just go off of what we know of our world.
Yeah.
Which is, if I'm here, this is where I'm at.
Right.
But what I think I'm getting from you is that in the spiritual world, you can have kind of your existence in multiple places.
Yeah, depending upon, the state of your life at that moment.
Yeah.
So the most intense, unhappiest place, part of you is there. And the place where you've experienced the most happiness and joy, a part of you is there too.
Wow.
And so when you become this telepathic entity, this, living conscious without your body, when you decide to appear as an apparition or a ghost, you can decide how you want to appear, as when you were younger or older. It's entirely up to you, and you can also influence the way a photograph is taken or not. But it's dependent upon who's taking the photograph or who the subject is. Because, truth be told, you can't really take a picture of a ghost because a ghost doesn't reflect light. So if there's nothing for the camera to work off of, then there's no ghost. And so what that tells you is the apparition is the one that influences or decides whether or not it wants to be seen, in a photograph. And I've had people with the high-powered cameras go to the most haunted places and get nothing. And then you get an 8-year-old boy with a throwaway Fuji camera, and he gets all sorts of stuff on it.
Yeah.
So it's really who's taking the picture or who the subject is.
I've never heard it described that way, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's very, very common sense stuff. And I think if we ever solve the mystery of life and death, then this whole paranormal thing will be a bust, and we won't need it anymore. And I'm afraid I'll be out of a job.
You're going to have to find some other kind of work. Let's not make that happen.
Yeah.
For your career's sake, let's just keep it going.
Right.
Wow, okay, so that's awesome. Are there any other kind of special tours that you're doing for the month of October? That's a lot already.
Yeah, and we're doing our Ghosts of Old Honolulu tour through Groupon, so that's on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Friday, Saturdays is, the haunted trolley thing. And I am drawing a blank in my brain, but I know we also have stuff scheduled on Sundays as well.
Well, I know that there's some other tours that you can't talk about either, but yeah, you're right. You're every day of the month you've got something going on.
And on some of those late nights when the tour ends at 10, we'll be going off to do another tour at 11 or midnight.
Oh.
Gosh.
Yeah. Why do I do these things to myself? Yeah.
Well, I know for the people that go on your tours, they're appreciative because all of our friends who went, they just came back with such rave reviews.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
They just loved it.
This is why my wife doesn't let me read the Yelp reviews. And she says they're all good, but, she doesn't want me to be influenced by anything like that.
Oh, whoops, sorry.
Yeah.
We thought it's all right.
Right. That's okay.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Whether it's good or bad, she just wants me to stay focused on what I do and not have what I do be influenced by, that review, whether it's good or not good.
She's the only reviewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I said, that's a good thing, though. It does work out. Were there any other questions?
What's more scary, the paranormal world or married life? I'm just kidding.
No, married life is good. What's scary about the paranormal tours that I do is not the ghosts, but the stupid people.
Yeah.
Or the crazy people. And we could do a whole other show just on crazy people.
Yeah, because you also got to assume that the people who want to go on these, not all of them are of sane mind or clear thinking, right?
Not at all. And some of them perceive that, the thing that's missing in their life is the thing that I can fill.
Yeah.
I can fill that void. I can answer that question. And the second, and this has taken experience and years, but, I've come to realize that when there's people like that on the tour, the second you give them focus or attention, they latch onto you.
Yeah.
And, and that's when it gets really uncomfortable. And it's gotten to the point sometimes where I'm been going through the tour for an hour, and at some point I referenced that this is my wife because she comes on the tours with me, and she has gotten daggers stared into her, by women on the tour.
Because they're jealous.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, and some of them are
Poor wife.
Yeah. She handles it well though, But when I get those crazy ones, what do they call that? They don't have boundaries, so they tend to be right here.
Oh, we have a friend like that.
Yeah. And I think I told you about the time that a person told me that she perceived that I was possessed and that she was skilled in different types of massage, and she was going to massage the demons out of my body. And,
interesting.
Yeah. And when I really got a good look at her, because we were in the back parking lot of the old haunt, and I kind of like stepped this way toward my car, and she stepped with me. So the light from the 7-Eleven next door, she stepped into it. I looked in her eyes. I'm like, wow, there's nobody in there.
Oh.
Yeah, like nobody paid the bills.
Have you ever had a spirit pretend that they are on this tour with you, and you don't realize till a little bit into it, like, oh, that's not an actual person. It's just someone, like, you know, kind of hanging out.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. The funny thing is they look just like you and me.
I thought you were going to be like, no, that doesn't happen.
Oh, it happens all the time.
What?
Yeah. But, you know, like when you, there's a difference between when something like that is on a tour and when there's somebody possessed. Whereas when there's an entity or an apparition on the tour, they have this little fuzzy outline, you know, framing their body. And when a person's possessed, you know, like how if you're looking at a street, like maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it's been a hot day and you see the heat.
Yeah.
So a person who's possessed has that thing around
Oh.
them. Yeah. And so sometimes they show up on the tour, you know, just to check out what's going on, and then they leave, or sometimes they're so interested they decide to hang out for a little while.
Now, when someone's possessed, I mean, is that something that you feel like, well, I gotta try to do something to, you know, extract that spirit, or do you feel like that's, you do what you do, spirit? Like, I ain't gonna mess with you.
It's actually all because of the person. And you see, there's a funny thing, and if you guys hear this on any other tour, after I say this, you know that they have stolen it from me, because that's what they tend to do. They have no imaginations of their own. The Vatican, an edict was passed down from the Pope, and I apologize, I forget which one, that when the exorcist is going to a place to perform the exorcism on what they call the energumen, and you can Google that, before they can perform the rites or the rituals of exorcism, they have to ask the person who's possessed if they want the rituals of exorcism performed. If the person doesn't want it, no matter what the circumstance is, you can't do it. And I think it's because there's a lot of liability in that. Mm. There's a case where a woman, you know, was supposedly possessed, and she died because of dehydration. And so her parents and the exorcist who performed the ritual were both, I think they were thrown in jail and they were sued in court. And we're talking about, you know, the physical part of it.
Yeah.
You know, the dehydration, and I think it was considered as murder. You know, and so all that spiritual part was left out of it. So I think that's my own personal opinion is why they started to say you have to ask permission of the person.
Yeah.
You know, and if they don't want the exorcism, you can't perform it. Absolutely not.
But if a person's possessed, like, how can they know to consciously say, like, yes, I want this exorcism?
I think at some point they do know, and they realize what's going on by, you know, whatever is going on with their bodies physically. Oh. You know, but
so it's not that if someone's possessed that they're 100% like completely lost to everything and they're just a shell. And
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they come in and out of it. Whatever's in there, you know, comes in and out too. But without the permission of the possessed, you cannot perform the ritual.
Yeah.
And so what you see in these movies, these motion pictures, is all Hollywood.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The person just walks in and starts, you know, flailing the holy water and, you know, whipping them with the vestment. But it's all based on the permission.
Oh, I see.
And it's the same thing that, you know, the devil cannot do anything to you unless you willingly give permission to do it. So they say.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember that.
But unfortunately, Nolan, there are weekend courses online where you can become an exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah, through a Friday, Saturday, Sunday course.
No way.
Yeah. Huh. And it's supposedly from a renegade exorcist from the Vatican who, you know, was exiled for being too extreme, or I guess too overzealous. And so he's got a weekend thing on the internet online where he needs warriors in his army, and you're an exorcist after a weekend.
You should try and take it just to see what it's all about. Maybe we can get our listeners to sponsor you to take the course.
Yeah.
That would be pretty funny.
Well, a couple of months ago, I think it was in Minnesota, one of those Midwestern states where they were having a convention or a gathering of exorcists.
That must have been
Yeah.
quite a collection of interesting characters.
But you would have to have been a Catholic priest and, of that level.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the stuff is real. It does happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there are possessions in all different philosophies and religions, and each one has their own method in which they deal with it. But for the one that we're familiar with the most, the Catholic Church, that's the process.
Mm-hmm. Jamie's friend Sally had a question.
She's possessed too, Sally?
Yeah. Some would argue that, I don't know. Sorry, Sally, I don't really know anything about you. But she has kids and stuff, so I can see how that could happen.
Oh my God.
Drive her crazy. But Jamie and she were classmates at Iolani. And so when Jamie told me to read her question, I read, I was like, I have no idea what she's trying to ask. And so Jamie had to interpret for me.
Right.
But it had something to do with, she wanted to learn more about, or hear your thoughts on Aumakua ushering spirits from Kaena Point.
Oh.
That was the first question.
That was the first question?
Yeah.
What did she want to know?
She just said, any insight or legends about Aumakua ushering spirits from Kaena Point or not, or about Kaena Point in general?
The Leaping Stone, the Lelina Ka'uhane, is where the spirits of people who've passed leap from the stone into the next world. And so there's this window that opens, and it's supposed to be dark and cavernous, and that's where you pass from this world into the next. And if you have family members or Aumakua that are there, then they will help you get to the next place. Very much the same as they do with the ulu olewalo, or the breadfruit tree that helps you pass. So there's different places like Kaena Point around the island. The other one is at the very point at Barbers Point, another one in Moanalua Valley. And I think a smaller one is underneath the cafeteria at Moanalua High School.
Oh.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
That explains why a lot of my Moanalua friends are kind of iffy.
Yeah, they're a strange bunch.
We actually have a couple friends who teach there. Maybe we can ask them. So it's under the cafeteria, you said?
Yeah, a part of the cafeteria. There's
I've
actually
eaten there before. Because I spoke at a career day or something.
Oh,
for
awesome!
Our friend there. So
awesome.
I know exactly where you're talking about.
Yeah, because the Night Marcher Trail that comes from the back of Moanalua Valley goes through Kaiser Hospital across to Aliamanu, goes down into that opening under the Moanalua High School cafeteria and comes out in the courtyard or the food court of 99 Ranch Market.
I've eaten there.
Yes. How's the food?
All right.
Yeah. And then it heads out to, what's that place? Ke'ehi Lagoon. Okay. What was the other question?
This one's the one that I had a hard time understanding, so maybe Jamie can help me with this. But she's asking what your thoughts about geography and travel influencing spiritual awareness and oral traditions. And this is where she kind of lost me, so maybe Jamie can further explain it.
She remembers Glenn Grant saying something about how Opake were not always in Hawaii, but they immigrated here.
Yeah.
And she said that now she's living in Utah now.
Mm-hmm.
And she said some of the ghost stories that she hears over there are totally different from anything she ever heard growing up. But there's some stories like Navajo skinwalkers that are similar to stuff that she's heard in Hawaii. So she was wondering if that's like a travel thing or like an oral.
No, remember, the Native First Nations people are indigenous people, just like we are here in the islands. And like us, the Native Indigenous First Nations people had to adapt to their environment and had to really depend on their environment for their survival. So their cultural stories and beliefs and spirituality are based on their environment. Communion with the raven spirit, the wolf spirit, skinwalkers, or shapeshifters. except this is all happening for them on the open plain, whereas we, native people on these islands depend upon the ocean, the winds and the elements. And so we have Aumakua, we have Kupua, shapeshifters, very much the same as they do. As far as obake, it's, a generalized Japanese term for ghost, and there's so many different levels of ghosts in Japan. Angry ghost, sad ghost, romantic ghost, drunk ghost, I
bet that ghost is kind of irritating.
Yeah, they are.
Drunk ghost.
Yeah.
Pull it together.
Because the other terms are obake, yurei, yokai. The yurei and the yokai are the ones who are here for unfinished business. And so they appear as they last looked when they were in the casket, which is in a long white robe and the long black hair, which became the ring. So it's that kind of stuff. So there's places in Japan where they will never develop because of all the wars that happened there and the thousands of people that died. But even in modern day Japan, there's ghosts all over the place, and the detail of ghosts in Japan are so, I don't know, I think finite is the wrong word, but there's so many, down to the ghosts of little boys that lick the oil off of oil lamps.
What?
What?
Yeah,
What?
in your house. So if you have an oil lamp, you'll have this type of Japanese ghost, which is a little boy, and he will lick all the oil off.
Why?
Yeah, I know why, but isn't that freaking creepy?
Even if it was a real boy doing that, what is wrong with you?
And then they have another thing which is interesting called a rain woman, and I forget the Japanese term. Forgive me, Japanese people. I'm not being disrespectful, but the rain woman is this old hag in this beat up, yukata, and wherever she goes, there's torrential rain. But her function is basically to spirit away newborn children.
Wait, so take them away?
Take them away, and in some cases, consume them.
Oh.
But she also feeds off women who have miscarried, feeding off their grief. And so sometimes it's only a woman like that who can either take the place of the rain woman, or because she's experienced the loss of a child and is not dealing with the grief, that she eventually becomes a rain woman. And that's what the rain woman is. So symbolically the rain is all of her grief and all of her sorrow.
Yeah.
It's a crazy story.
And of course, cue the music.
Cue
again.
the music.
Cue the creepy music.
La, la, la. And so there was an incident about 10 years ago about somebody seeing a rain woman up at the Nu'uanupali Drive. Old haggard Japanese woman in the beat up yukata and carrying a baby, and walking up Nu'uanupali Drive and just the rain falling on her. And these are kids who are driving by, like, momentarily they saw things in a flash and too scared to stop, so they sped off, and they said they saw this other live living Japanese woman running after this thing, screaming her name in Japanese, and something about the rain woman turned around and they were talking in Japanese, and the rain woman gave the baby back to the living woman. And these kids said, from what they could understand in the Japanese, because they said it was it sounded like old style Japanese, plantation Japanese. But long story short, it was basically this negotiation, give me the baby and I'll come back and I'll take your place.
Whoa.
Yeah. So a lot of that cool Japanese obake, yurei, yokai stuff has emigrated to Hawaii.
Is that just because the Japanese people came here?
Yeah. Like on the island of Kauai, they had, in the 1938, there was a rash. It was actually an epidemic of inugami, Japanese dog demon possessions. Because those families in Kauai were from western Japan, places like Hiroshima and Shikoku, where it was famous for having families who kept mummified dogs to use as a curse, to possess people with this dog demon. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Senator Spark Matsunaga writes about it in this book, Kodomo no Tameni. And Spark Matsunaga's father was it's not an Odai-san, it's something more powerful. But he was the one that was dealing with all these possessions going on. And it was all about jealousy, one plantation Japanese family had something, the other didn't, and they were mad, and so they sent the curse of the Inugami to possess somebody in that family. And it said it was to the point where when Senator Spark Matsunaga's father was performing the exorcism rituals, the victim would like start, going down on all fours and growling and howling like a dog, and walking how a dog walks. Where's that dog?
And we're keeping him far away from this story.
Yeah. And so it's a documented case, and it was an epidemic. I think it was in Kapa'a and Lihue on Kauai. And so some of the descendants of those families are still alive today on Kauai. Yeah. I'm sorry. This is my job. This is what I do. I research these things.
It's fascinating, and it makes me all sweaty.
I'm sorry. I mean, this is my business. This is what I do.
Now, I don't. This is kind of, I guess, semi-related to what we're talking about. But
wait, did that answer that girl's question?
Did it?
I think so.
Okay, just have her comment if it did or did not. I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nolan.
Well, maybe this might be an addendum to that. So, I think you sort of touched on this earlier, but does that mean that like spirits can travel? Like, it's not that they necessarily travel. But, I mean, I guess they can be in multiple places, depending on, like, if they've, I guess, how you described, like, a thumbprint there and stuff. But is it a matter of that, like, she's saying, like, let's say a person, their spirit is in Utah. Like, can they travel over to Hawaii and then start, doing things here in Hawaii as well? Or, like, how does...
In what capacity?
I guess, like, if she were to say...
Vacation.
Well, like, she's saying, like, oh, the other night the spirit, like, started scratching on my walls, right? And then could it be that same spirit is scratching on my walls here in Honolulu?
Oh, it could be.
So
could
they
be.
can, I guess...
Yeah. There are documented cases where that's happened, in different locations, like halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Like you'll see your dearly departed grandmother, here in Hawaii, and at the very same time, maybe your brother will see it also.
Right.
In Japan or Hong Kong, that happens a lot.
So it's not necessarily a matter of that they're traveling.
Yeah.
It's just that they can kind of their spirit can be.
Yeah. And again,
show themselves to other places and other people, right?
Definitely, because again, it's a matter of telepathic projection of the conscious, entity that's doing that.
Yeah.
There's a very well-known story that was told to Glenn Grant about this guy who went to Vietnam because his father was killed in World War II, and he said he hated all Orientals because they're all the same. But he said while he was in Vietnam, did things, saw things that nobody else should see or do, and his unit was assigned to a monastery because it was near the border. And the military were afraid that if the Viet Cong found this monastery with these monks, that they would mutilate them, which is what they did, skin them alive and stuff like that. So they went there specifically to protect the monastery. But this guy is saying, I still have this hatred for these Orientals. And when nobody was looking, if the monk was too close to me, I'd hit him with the butt end of my rifle or, kick another monk in the stomach, punch them when they're passing by, or defecate or urinate in their food bowl and stuff like that. And so one day he said the head of the monastery comes up to him and he says he's kind of floored because this monk in the middle of the Vietnamese jungle speaks perfect English, and he tells the soldier, he goes, why do you disparage us? All we've done, myself and my brothers, is we've seen to your every need. We've clothed you, we've fed you, we've bathed you. And he said, and I know certainly for a fact that some of the brothers have brought women from a nearby village to this place, which they're not allowed to do. And he said, and for everything we've afforded you, you mistreat us, and you disparage us, and I don't understand why this is, because you're supposed to be here to protect us. And the guy says, he tells the monk, he goes, well, it's because of World War II and, my father and all this. He says, and besides, this monastery it's an atrocity, and it's offensive to my beliefs, as a Christian. And the monk says, "Oh, I see. If I can prove to you that there's anything valid about the philosophy that we practice in this temple, will you leave us alone?" And the guy tells the monk, "If you can prove there's anything to any of this, when we get back to base, I will go AWOL, and I'll come back to this monastery, and you can shave my head, and I'll convert." And so the monk tells him, "Fine. 10 paces behind the temple, you will come to a clearing, and there will be 2 trees that look like pillars. Walk 10 yards after those 2 trees and take a left turn another 100 yards. You will come into another clearing, and you will have your answer." And so he says it's in the middle of the day, and it's very hot, very humid. And he follows the directions to the letter, and he comes into the clearing. And he says, in the clearing, in the middle of the Vietnamese jungle, in the heat, is this window floating in the air. And he said, for some reason, I recognized that window because of the cornflower curtains on the inside of it. He said, but for the life of me, I couldn't place where I've seen them. And he says, the curtains open, and inside this window floating in the air, looking out at him, is his mother. And he says, my mom looked like she'd just seen a ghost, and then the window just dissipates. He says, when the detail is over and they get back to base, there's a few letters waiting for him, and they're from his mom. And one of the letters says, "Dear son, today as I was preparing lunch, I happened to look out the kitchen window and saw you in the yard, standing there in your uniform with your weapon. And you look like you have seen a ghost. I am concerned for your well-being. Please write me back and let me know that you're alive."
What?
Yeah. And at that point, he takes off his shirt and shows Glenn Grant this tattoo with sutras. And Glenn says, "What is that?" And the guy says, "I went AWOL, went back, found that place, shaved my head, and I converted." And he says, these sutras, although they look very elaborate and very extensive, they all say one thing. And that thing is that love is the answer to everything. So the question is, how in the hell in the middle of the Vietnamese jungle did your mother's kitchen window appear with your mom looking out at you? But I think that was the life-changing moment for him. That was the proof that whatever was being practiced in that monastery was essentially the real thing.
Yeah, that would change my life as well.
So a lot of times, these things are not really meant to scare you, although that's the purpose of it. There's some things that happen in the paranormal world that's actually meant to change your perspective on things that you thought were one way up until that point.
Yeah, and up until now, I just totally forgot how filled with hate and anger this guy was.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, okay, now that, the love is the answer thing, how beautiful this whole thing is. But at first it's like, what a trip, this is crazy, so freaky. But it's a beautiful resolution to it all.
It's a simple thing, but a lot of us don't get it. And it usually takes something drastic before we change our outlook on things. Mm-hmm. Because you don't want to change your outlook 2 seconds before you're going to die. Oh yeah,
I grew up thinking that, because I used to have so much guilt about if I were to die, am I going to go to heaven or hell? Right. So I always planned out if I could have at least a minute before I die, if I'm going down a plane, I would ask for forgiveness for all these specific things so that I could clear the plate so that I could go to heaven. Right.
I always think that too. Okay, I'm on a plane, I have no control over what happens. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. I would be dear Lord, please forgive me of all of my sins. And welcome me when I get to that pearly gate. Thanks.
Were there any other questions?
Oh, no. I was looking to see if we had more, but let's, you had pictures you said.
I will show you one picture, because I don't want to freak her out.
I want to be freaked out.
And that's what they all say. You're going to have to turn off the lights.
Okay. I will turn off the lights.
It's going to be so dark.
Yeah.
It's so dark.
So just so the listeners know, we don't have any mirror or windows in our office. And see,
it's okay.
Mommy's okay.
So it's literally pitch black in here. with the glow of Lopaka's iPod?
All I'm going to say is I was performing a prayer at the Royal Burial Mound at the Palace, and I took a step away from it, and a friend of mine took this photograph.
Whoa!
So,
Whoa!
from what you could gather, is this someone that was, I guess, like a spirit that was with you guys, or do you know any backstory behind what this could be?
That's me in the photograph, with no head and no shoulders.
That's you?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought this was a spirit.
No, that's me.
That's you?
Yeah.
And yet the person to your left is like
somebody on the tour.
Yeah, visible.
And so you see above where the head and shoulders are supposed to be, there's all this like distortion, this circular.
Yeah.
Right.
It kind of bends around here.
Yeah.
What?
So
is that because they want to say like you're going to get your head cut off or something?
No. I think what was happening is, my own personal opinion is the burial mound is built over like a electromagnetic field or maybe an opening between both worlds.
Oh.
So an expert in parapsychology saw this photograph and said, the white thing is probably the flash from the camera on my leather jacket. But he said you can't rule out the psychic. He said if this was actually an opening in that place, then the reason why I'm so transparent without a head and shoulders, maybe I was in between both worlds.
Whoa.
Halfway in, halfway out.
And do you think that stays there, like that, I guess, the portal or whatever? So
yeah. If I can remember the conditions and the night that we were there, I could probably then remember, when to or not to go there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that your jacket is black, but it comes off white.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a leather jacket.
Crazy.
And that's the only picture I'm going to show you.
I want to see another one.
Oh, God, that's what they all say. All right, this is taken at a house at Hickam Air Force Base. When the woman walked into the house, the motion sensors went on outside. That's why you see the light outside the curtain. But she had brought something home with her from the cave in Hawai'i. And so what's in this picture is actually next to the curtain in the dark.
What did we look at? Wait.
What?
Is this, you mean so to the right of the curtain, this dark figure?
Yeah.
What is that?
Somebody in the cave, when she was taking a picture, tapped her on the shoulder and asked her for a hairbrush, and she said she'd even look to see who it was, just reached in her purse and held her hand out like this and felt somebody take it. And then another tap on the shoulder, and the person says thanks, and she goes like this and feels it in her hand and puts the brush in her purse. And so she says the whole time she's coming home, the camera's going on and off by itself, and then it finally takes this picture as she's opening the door like this, and the camera strap is around her wrist. So this is actually an accidental picture, but...
Is that a face?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I don't want to see anymore. Oh, go turn on the light and come back and hold my hand.
So she said, psychics have told me that, there are key objects that belong to a spirit or a spirit identifies with so they can pass to the other side. I said, yeah, all those psychics are fake because this is a Hawaiian thing. There's a story about a girl who was murdered in a cave and, she liked to brush her long black hair. And so I told her, whoever it was that asked you for the hairbrush, you gave it to them, they used it, they gave it back, so it's more than likely that they went with the hairbrush to your house. And so the woman asked me what was she supposed to do, and I said, take the brush back to the cave and burn it. Never heard from her again.
Oh.
Never knew if she did it or did not. Yeah. So that's my life. That's what I do.
I have a question. Do you know about orbs in pictures?
Well, since we're talking about orbs...
Emmett is not a fan of orbs.
Yeah.
Emmett, why are you so upset?
What is that?
Whoa!
What is it?
Dandelion? I don't know.
That's the common answer. What is it?
I don't know.
It's not an orb. When the flash on your camera goes off, it's reflecting dust particles that are in the air, so this is dust. And so it doesn't matter if it's red, white, blue, yellow, green, black. It's not happy, mad, sad, or glad. It's just colored dust. It's dust. But you see how people mistake it for angels and orbs and, you know. So proof of what I'm saying is in this photograph, this cemetery in Wailua, the beach is right on the other side. So you have a combination of red dirt, right, and salt particles from the ocean. So very, very explainable. When you see orbs in a photograph, they are always moving, always in motion, like this. Yeah, they always have tails at the end, and like this one too. You know this place, Nolan. It's the Manoa Chinese Cemetery.
The tour that I went on with you,
Yeah.
We went there, and that's when my friend, his camera wouldn't work. He's very upset about it.
So that's a combination of orbs and raindrops and moisture. So you can tell which one.
Yeah, the ones with the tails, yeah.
The ones with the tails. This one is taken at the same cemetery in Wailua with no flash. So whatever this is actually, again, with no flash, emanating its own light source.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No flash. It's not a bug. Yeah. And again, that's the children's cemetery. Sometimes orbs help us out on these tours, and have a very strict rule about alcohol. There's no alcohol on the tours, not allowed. So the woman who took this picture of her friend at the garden outside Queen Emma Summer Palace one night showed us the picture right after it was taken, and she goes, "What do you think this is? Because you said no alcohol." I said, "Yeah." Now, doesn't that thing, whatever it is, look like it's sort of like pointing to the woman's backpack?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's because she's hiding the 6-pack of German dark beer.
No.
Yes, in her backpack after I said no alcohol.
Oh my God.
So were the ghosts of the royals, the ali'i at Queen Emma Summer Palace, Hanaya Kamalama, sort of like, you know,
Get this beer out of here.
yeah, and open it up, let's have some. Okay. That's orbs. No, thank you. And we didn't have to turn the lights off for that, right?
A lot more digestible. So, Jamie D, are you still interested in going on this the courthouse tour, or now are you freaked out?
I'm on the fence.
You're on the fence.
It's funny because I do a weekly segment on the bomb called "What You Doing at the Courthouse." So I think it's kind of funny. Like maybe I could do a couple segments on that.
Yeah, sure.
We can record a couple there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, seriously, Nolan, absolutely, no problem.
That would be pretty funny.
Yeah. But yeah, October 7th, it's called the Stay of Execution.
Is it going to be scary?
Oh, yeah. But it's going to go over portions of the Massey trial and the Fukunaga case that haven't been talked about before. And we'll get a view from, Clarence Darrow. He was the lawyer that defended the Masseys. So we'll get his perspective as well.
When it comes to that, like, I would imagine that spirits who want to communicate their side of things, like, they can still, like, it's not gospel or truth. Like, they can still lie to you, right?
Yeah.
So, like, even if that's... So, like, we sometimes watch this show, like, Tyler, the Medium, on VH1.
Right.
I know, it's terrible. But, like, sometimes they'll say, like, oh, my brother was murdered or was in an accident, and he said it wasn't an accident and stuff like that. Like, these spirits could still, like, tell you a lie.
Yeah.
But we would assume, thinking, like, oh, well, the spirit told us from the other world, it must be true.
Yeah.
Not always the case, right?
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize, and I learned this from my friend who's a psychic, Paul Smith, is that after you die, you don't become this all-knowing being that has all the answers. You're still the same person.
Yeah.
So if you're a liar and a troublemaker, after you die, you're still a liar and a troublemaker.
Yeah.
You don't ascend to heaven, you don't get your angel's wings right away. You're still the same person. But there's a point after you've passed away where you realize, wow, that's not really important anymore. You know, all that stuff I held on to, those things I worried about, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that, I mean, I know we covered a lot of different tours that you got planned and things, but anything else that you wanted to talk about or let us know about?
Well, I do have to get going to pick up my wife, but don't be sorry. What I want to tell everybody is, you know, for those of you who are interested in doing paranormal investigations and do it as a hobby, that's fine. But if you're going to do it as a hobby, my advice to you is never go alone. Never go to places that are dangerous where you could get hurt or you could get arrested if the neighbors see you traipsing around an empty lot or a house that's been condemned.
Yeah.
Always safety first. And that's the common sense thing. Be careful. And if you're serious about becoming a paranormal investigator, what you see done on TV is not really what's the real thing.
Right.
You know, all that stuff that they feature is after going through 17, 20 hours of footage. And so if you're going on a paranormal investigation, there's hardly a chance that something will happen right away.
Yeah.
And you probably end up having nothing happen and everybody goes home disappointed. And if you're going to start ghost tours, rule number 1, check your facts. Don't make things up. Don't lie. And never guarantee anyone that they're going to see a ghost or something is going to happen, because you're setting yourself up and your people up for disappointment. Always be 100% real. Be 100% honest. And people can see that.
Yeah.
And they know. And for my tours, my number 1 rule, believe it or not, is I want everybody to have fun. And enjoy themselves and have a good time. You know, the scary part, I'll take care of that. But what I always want people to come away with is, you know, having to learn something that they never knew before, or finding out information that they never knew existed. I want people to come away really knowing more about themselves and thinking about their own mortality.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think when people have that expectation of it, you can't be disappointed, because you're opening yourself to that experience rather than like, ooh, I hope we see something crazy happening. Right?
Yeah, because whatever happens isn't up to me. It's up to the people who come on the tour, you know, and the type of energy they bring depends on what happens or doesn't happen. Yeah.
Well, knowing how Jamie is, if he does go on this, like all these spirits that want to make trouble are going to gravitate towards her.
I'll be in the courtroom going, over there. All right, guys.
Can she bring like a tinfoil hat or something to protect herself?
Yeah, absolutely. Bring it.
Well, we'll share on our description page all the information, how people can get tickets or contact you for more information on these tours. But Lopaka, thank you so much. As always, this has been so much fun, and really appreciate you taking time to hang out with us again.
No problem. I enjoyed it, and maybe next time we can talk about stuff like how do you know if your house is really haunted, stuff like that.
Yeah, ooh, that'd be cool. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Man. Oh, man, our thanks again to Lopaka for coming back and sharing with us some great stories. And, man, some of those tours sound really fun. And I've been on his tour before, many years ago, and I was like, it was cool, but I think I'm good for the rest of my life. But now, I don't know, Jamie, you think you want to go take that courtroom case tour? See, I think it'd be funny because with my whole bit with what you're doing at the courthouse, I really think it could be kind of a cool thing where we kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I can record a couple interviews there of what they're doing at the courthouse. Maybe we can get some spirits on there, some ghosts to talk about what they're doing at the courthouse. But if you're interested in any of these tours, you can go to Lopaka's website, and we'll have links to that all on our our episode page. So you can go and it's on our website, and you can go and click the links, make the calls, go ahead and get yourself on one of these awesome tours. But thank you again to Lopaka for hanging out with us, and thank you for downloading another episode. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you for your continued support, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hong.